Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dan today we are going uh, to continue our lecture regarding the Malaysian valuation standard. So today we are going to look at standard 13 until standard 19. So this is an important aspect for the next session of lecture. So we are going to look at on what is available. So for standard 13, so we are going to look regarding update valuation, whereby for update valuation, so this is a valuation that is communicated to the client uh, by an update of opinion of value, and usually it is being supported by a full valuation report previously. And for the aspect of update valuation, we need to look on the updated market value based on the client's instruction. Let's say if you are trying to find out uh, from a previous valuation is conducted in 2019 and you are going to update in 2022 by the standard 13.2.1 subsection B states that the previous valuation report prepared must not be more than 3 years. So within 3 years, update valuation can still be conducted. So it is not used by the client or lending institution for obtaining or granting fresh or additional funding based on the value reported. So the MVS is very clear on this. In the update valuation, usually is being used by the financing institution so that they can find out. Let's say the previous valuation in 2019 is around 500,000 ringgit. So in 2022, it's already become 530,000 ringgit. So the 30,000 difference is based on the current comparable that we use in 2022. So the purpose is not for this financing institution to make a new loan disbursement or anything, but it's just for them to get the information relating the most recent market value for that particular subject property. Okay, so that is relating update valuation. So it's very clear on this. Other than that, the usage of forms such as brief valuation, check valuation, one-page valuation, or desktop valuation, or indicative or indication is also not permitted. But if you want to make an update valuation, it is being permitted by the board of value under the standard on the basis that it already have a previous full valuation report in the past 3 years. Okay, so for standard 14, mass valuation for property backed portfolios, it's stated that mass valuation must also not for additional loan facilities, and this must be conveyed to the client in writing. This is for Basel requirement. So such valuation generally referred to as mass valuation, and in carrying out this assignment, the valuer may rely on information sourced from general market report and studies such as Bank Negara Malaysia publications, JPPH or NAPIC reports, and other reliable indices and statistics, as well as from in-house data. For standard 15, it states regarding valuation for plant machinery and equipment. So as we know, some subject properties such as factories, they have all of these plant and machinery equipments that is different regarding to the normal subject properties. So plant and machinery valuations comprise with specialized equipment that may or may not have the suitable comparables in Malaysia. So sometimes we need to look outside of Malaysia in order to get a similar comparable to conduct the valuation with. Okay, so PME constitute a class of property other than real estate property or personal property, PME can include industrial infrastructure, the utilities, and the building services installations, the specialized building and machinery and equipment forming a dedicated assemblage. For example, if you are trying to do valuation for an airport, so in the airport they have a conveyor belt system. So for the luggages to be brought up from the front desk to ultimately inside the cargo area of an airplane. So it involves very highly specialized equipment. So this is an aspect of value also for the equipment to be part of the whole market value of that airport. Okay, so equipment is an all-encompassing term for other assets such as sundry machinery, tooling, fixtures, furniture and furnishings, trade fixtures and fittings, vehicles, and loose tools that are used to assist the operation of the enterprise or entity. Okay, so when valuing PME on the basis of market value, the valuer must state whether the valuation assumes as that PME is valued as a whole for its working place, as a whole for removal, or as individual items for removal. So sometimes, let's say like the baggage equipment in the airports. So sometimes you don't want to value the whole thing. Maybe you just need to find a component to be replaced. So that must also be stated in the valuation report. Okay. So asset functionality may be dependent on other assets. For example, within an integrated production line, operating software licenses. So valuer must give the assumption whether this is included in the valuation, excluded but assumed to be available, or excluded and assumed not to be available. So maybe there is some other plant and machinery equipment like an airport. You have a luggage handling system, you have the elevator system, you have the travelator, but maybe is not being conducted for the basis of that particular valuation. It's just available, but you didn't include because you are just focusing on the luggage handling system. Okay, so all PME shall be properly inventoried, inspected, and adequately described to give an accurate picture of the item or items being valued. For explanation of the standard, the PME evaluations are specialized and require experience and specific training. So valuers are advised to ensure that they have the requisite experience and training before accepting any instructions for the valuation of PME. For in the aspect of board of valuer, they didn't provide any additional requirement for you to become a registered valuer and also a registered PME valuer. But the valuer in this MVS standard 15 states that you need to have the expertise and also the training. So for these trainings is something that can be considered as add-on values, whereby you need to have courses that you went. Maybe it's being conducted in Malaysia or being conducted overseas, and then you need to get the certificate proving that you are somebody who is competent enough to carry out valuation for PME. So that is the reason. But for plant and machinery valuations in Malaysia, we don't have that many experts because it's not a part of requirement as set up by the board valuer. It's just an additional expertise or additional ability. And for PME evaluations is also not being conducted as often, but when there is a case for PME evaluation, so of course we are going to need the people, the registered valuer with the expertise to conduct this. Okay, Valuers should be conversant in items of PME that are generally valued as building components and ensure there is no overlapping or double counting of items. This includes air conditioning system, lift operating system, generators, pumps and motors, building automation systems, and other IT-based systems that are traditionally included in a building valuation unless specially instructed to do so, in which case the valuer shall state so in his report. So where an item of a piece of PME is old and its substitute not available, then the valuer may have regard to a suitable modern substitute, having regard also to its age and function. And in cases with such PME merit only a salvage value, then the valuer shall state it in the report. So salvage value, you need to find out uh, the age of the PME, and then the actual economic life of that particular PME. So even though let's say you went to the Bow Plantation in Cameron Highlands, so some of the machinery and equipment being used there are already 10, 15, 20 years old, and maybe some of them is already nearing to 100 years old. The same equipment being used when Cameron Highlands and the plantations were opened up, but there is still value on that. Even though it's already 100 years old, that machine is working. At least in terms of valuation, it still be considered under salvage value. But the actual true value itself, and the market value of that particular piece, may also depend on the transaction. So on the basis of assumption of this particular 100 years equipment for tea plantations, for tea processing machines, on the basis of our opinion, so we can give them a suitable salvage value. Okay. For standard 16, so valuations submission for the director of insurance and takaful under the purview of Bank Negara, and then so this is regarding towards valuation of property assets or to revalue property assets, and we need to follow the valuations vetted by JPPH, and then for insurance we usually use the guideline for property valuation on insurance companies, and then being submitted to the Director of Insurance and Takaful Supervision Bank Negara. Like the valuation for Securities Commission Malaysia, such requirements represent specific user standards. For explanation, some of that we need to follow the Financial Services Act 2013 under the policy document entitled Management of Insurance Fund. So a licensed insurer must obtain a valuation by an independent professional valuer to validate material fair value changes or revaluations at any time and as when the bank may require, and the cost of such validation must be borne by the licensed insurer. So the assets of a company that needed to be insured, let's say if we are trying to do a valuation for Felda Global Venture, FGV, so they have a lot of property assets regarding properties, regarding the plantations, regarding the plant and machineries, and also other assets such as removable asset like automobile. So this is all can be valued for the purpose for insurance. Let's say for the purposes of fire insurance and everything, but usually for very big corporate companies, they need to submit this current asset valuation for the purposes of following the act and for following the requirement needed by the governing Bank Negara of Malaysia. Okay, standard 17, valuation for submission to the Securities Commission Malaysia. So this is usually related towards prospectuses, whereby if a company wanted to be listed on the main board or the second board, so they are needed to provide a valuation report of all of their asset. And as a valuer, we need to comply with the asset valuation guidelines as issued by the Securities Commission Malaysia. So asset valuation guidelines so require, in addition to the requirements of the MBS, the additional provisions to be followed, where reliance is made to another expert's report in the course of carrying out the valuation. The expert appointed must have the relevant qualifications, skills, and experience, and be a member of a recognized professional body. The valuer, in relying on the expert's opinion, must discuss with the expert and must not follow the findings blindly. And so, if you are being commissioned for valuation for SC purposes, so sometimes we don't have the expertise. Let's say if you are trying to find out relating the cost for maintenance. So sometimes we need to ask other professionals such as a registered engineer in order for them to provide the maintenance cost for all of the machinery and equipment or for a particular uh, corporate body. And let's say if you are trying to do a valuation for telecommunications corporate company, so some of the telecommunication costs is not able to be identified by a registered valuer because it is not in our field of expertise. So, like I said before, we need to appoint somebody who have the expertise, like a registered engineer, registered telecommunications engineer, and then this must be also stated in the report. If we sought for other professionals' opinions and also advice in determining the whole valuation for submission for Securities Commission Malaysia. Okay, so valuation for submission to Bursa Malaysia Berhad, so is also quite the same, but in reality, so the valuation report is submitted to Bursa Malaysia Securities Berhad, whereas for Securities Commission is more towards if you are trying to offer up REITs, registration of prospectuses, IPO, and everything. But for Standard 18 is maintenance of the management for the transactions. So asset valuation guidelines are specific user standard and its application is also mandatory. And lastly, for the MVS, this is the last standard, which is standard 19. So we need to have also a limiting condition. So certain limiting condition and exclusion must be agreed with the client. So we can't assume additional risk. Let's say if you are trying to do a valuation for financing purposes, but suddenly the client uses your valuation report to be brought up in the high courts for land acquisition purposes. So that is something that we did not agree upon, and we should bear no responsibility for that. So it's going to be stated very clearly in the valuation report that the purpose of valuation conducted is only for financing. It's not going to be used for other purposes. But for this to be enforced, we need to state it inside the actual valuation report. Okay, so statement of standard limiting conditions that directly affect the valuation must be explained clearly where appropriate. For measurements, is also must be the one produced by ISM for uniform method of measurement of building. So we need to find out the current method, uniform method, the current one, the ones that uh, the most updated one being used by ISM. Okay, confidentiality. So the valuation report is confidential to the client only, and who is addressed and for the specific purpose. So if you are doing for financing, for that particular client. If the client's name is Azman bin Abu Shah, so Azman bin Abu Shah is the intended recipient only. So it's not going to be a public document. So if you wanted to do a public valuation, so it's also going to be stated very clearly in the valuation report. Okay, so use of report. So the opinion of value. So this is actually like we all know, valuation is an a work of science and also art. So if you wanted to get a second opinion, a third opinion is under the purview of the client. But if you are already appointed us as the one to conduct this valuation, so of course the opinion of value expressed in the report shall only be used by the addressee. For the legal title, whenever possible, a private title search is conducted at the relevant land registry or office, but this is only to establish the title particulars relevant to valuation. Uh, as a valuer, we are not a practicing lawyer, practicing officer of the court. So for legality purposes, the valuer does not accept any responsibility. So if you wanted to get more clarification or validation regarding the legality of documents, so as a valuer, we only rely on the information that is being given by us by the land registry or the land officers. But if you wanted to validate, you need to appoint uh, a certified member of the bar, which is what we commonly refer as lawyers. Okay, so site survey also. So as we are only a general practitioner, for site survey we only ascertain some boundaries, and we have assumed that the dimensions correspond with those shown in the title document. Either we get from the copy of the actual title itself, or we get a copy of the measurement plans from JUPAM, Jabatan Ukur dan Pemetaan Malaysia. For the actual validity of this document also, the client may also need to appoint maybe a registered land surveyor to determine the actual boundaries. But for the valuer, we did not conduct an actual site boundary measurement or survey. We just go and inspect physically and then look at the whole of the land, but not the actual whole measurement of that particular subject property. Okay, structural survey is also quite the same. So we take not any defects, but for structural defects inside particular beams in walls is something that is not be available from visual inspection, that is not under the responsibility of a registered valuer. For this, maybe they need to appoint a registered engineer or a registered building surveyor to help determine the internal defects that is not available on the naked eye. Okay, deleterious or hazardous material is also something that the valuer cannot ascertain. So this may require expertise from like the chemical departments. So a registered chemist may be the experts being needed to ascertain if there is a chemical hazard that is being placed at that particular subject property. Let's say it's a warehouse containing kerosene or containing asbestos. So that is we can state in the valuation report, but we cannot determine the level of hazard that is available by using the subject property. So this is another item for limiting conditions that the clients need to appoint another expert to evaluate the condition with. Okay, contamination, disease or infestation for leases and tenancies. So if it is being let or being tenanted, so we can give the assumption is is already being tenanted, but for the obligations or for the lease agreement or the tenancy agreement, so uh, not under the purview of the registered valuer. So we can only assume that there is no problem with the leasing or with the tenancy. Development agreements, outstanding debts. So this is something that the registered valuer is not going to look into. So the debts of that particular subject property is not under the purview of registered valuer. So this is something that the client needs to find out on their own. Taxation, encumbrances, statutory notices, and outgoings. So the assumption will be that the property will be considered as free and clear of all charges, lien, and other encumbrances which may be secured thereon. And we also assume that the property is free of statutory notices and outgoings. So this is also a limiting condition that is important for the registered value. Okay, for validity period, valuation is current as at the valuation date only. So if you conduct the valuation and the inspection on the 4th of July 2022, is that basis of market value is only relevant to 4th of July 2022. If you are looking to get an updated value of the subject property, either you need to conduct an update valuation or you need to conduct a fresh valuation report. Okay, so that is relating towards the actual Malaysian valuation standard, and a little bit on the aspect of interpersonal skills, so of valuer and estate agent. So of course, when we are trying to conduct valuation, we are business person, especially in the private sector. We are trying to get the business for us to be appointed as consultant. So salesmanship is an important aspect whereby we need to have the ability to satisfy customer needs, the art of winning hearts, and also the ability to negotiate, to emphasize inducing and make the prospective buyer or seller to take a decision in favor of going for the product being offered to him. So some of the characteristics that we need to have is that we need to provide the facts accurately, attractively, and also convincingly. Other than that, is you need to have the listening skills, the communication skill, the problem solving skill. So as a professional, sometimes we will encounter much problem. Let's say the strata title. We are doing evaluation for the apartment. We don't have the strata title. So what kind of document that we can get the information? So maybe we can obtain the sale and purchase agreement for us to find out some of the information needed to carry out the valuation report. Interpersonal skill, organizational skill, on self-motivation skill, persuasion skill, how you are going to persuade people to receive the opinion or market value that we have conducted. As a valuer, usually in the industry, the clients, they will usually not be satisfied with the valuation conducted if it does not meet their specific number. Let's say they are trying to purchase a property of 600,000 ringgit asking price, and then the market value is only 500,000 ringgit. So that means they have to top up some of the money that is not available through financing, whereby the valuation report is being conducted for. Okay, customer service skills, and lastly is the integrity. So having integrity and professionalism is very important as a valuer or even as an estate agent. So we are independent professionals, and uh, is being regulated by the Board of Valuer, Appraiser, Estate Agent and Property Managers Malaysia. So any actions that is not consistent with the actions of independency and also integrity is something that can be penalized by the board. Okay, so time management, so having the ability to have the self-discipline, to self-motivate and choosing the strategy of working that is most available. So the aspect of life and work balance is also being needed, but you need to know during the working hours we need to be as efficient as possible, working from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, so we need to conclude all of the works professionally within the stipulated manners, or else you are going overboard than the normal working hours. So maybe you have to work late or even come in to the offices in the weekend. So of course that is not going to be sustainable or even healthy in the long term. So this is something that uh, we need to ensure that we are trying our best to manage our time. So some of the strategies is know how you spend your time. So limit the actual time needed. So it's because if you are spending much more time in the office, so of course it's going to involve a lot more resources. You are going to lose out on the electricity, on the water, and then on the actual usages of the equipment there. Set priorities, use planning tool, get organized, schedule your time appropriately, and delegate. So if you are a registered valuer, of course we have some assistance as valuation executive, so you can delegate the work to other people and then not doing everything on your own, because it's going to be very consuming of you, and then utilize all of the resources. Okay, stop procrastinating. So don't delay the works. Try to uh, try to ensure that they are completed within the stipulated time as quickly, as efficiently as possible. Manage external time wasters, avoid multitasking, and of course, most importantly, for any person or professional, staying healthy is very important, because if you are becoming sick, so it's going to be a lot more downtime, and it's going to pressure you, your company, and even your clients, because your downtime means that there is no productivity from your part. So it's much better that you are healthy and productive as compared to you are productive on certain days, but some days you are unable to be productive because of your health reason. So this is something that we need to ensure. So that's why it's very important to have this work-life balances and going outside, on the weekend spend your time with the family. So working as a professional is a work-life balance. You need to balance all of the acts. So you need to provide the best services to the client and to the industry, but at the same time, you need to manage yourself as good as possible. Okay, so this is some of the actual lectures that we are going to look at for this week's recording session. So I hope everybody can benefit from MVS 13 until to MVS 19, and also some of the lectures being given on salesmanship and also the time management. Okay, so I think we have some time left to look into the final lecture for this semester. Okay, So this is regarding employment management. Okay, so we are going to continue this on the final week for next week, and after that we can conclude the whole semester for professional practice too. With that, I will end the lecture session with wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.